Welcome to the Revival Method podcast, where we teach you actionable steps that you can take to start moving, thinking, and feeling better. Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to another Revival Method podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brandon Parker, and today it's just going to be one of those other episodes where I'm just going to shoot from the hip, speak from my mind, because I'm currently inspired. I just got off the phone with two of my clients, and they're both down 30 pounds, and they both had a similar starting point, which made me think, okay, if these two people had the same starting point, there's probably some listeners that have similar issues, and I really want to help you navigate these roadblocks so you're not stuck trying to lose 30 pounds, or even worse, you lose those 30 pounds and you actually gain it all back, and now you are psychologically demoralized, okay? Before we get into that though, I really do have a small ask for you, and it would mean the world to me if you can take the 5 seconds that it would take to subscribe to the podcast and also give 5 stars. What this does is it tells the algorithm, hey, this podcast is actually worth listening to, and it would actually help me get closer to my personal goal of helping over 1 million people. You see, I have followers across all my platforms. I'm a million plus. I have a million plus followers, but that doesn't mean anything because followers doesn't mean impact. I truly want to help 1 million people change their lives, and it starts with building awareness around this podcast because that allows me to go deep, give you examples and things that actually could create clarity without the algorithm just smothering it and you actually never see it. Okay. So let's hop right into it. I just got off the phone call with two of my clients, and they both are now down over 30 pounds. And they both said something along the lines of, I can't believe how easy this has been. I'm eating more than I've ever eaten before. I am moving and feeling better than I ever felt before. And I actually never restricted a single food. And that's the game plan. So many people go down this rabbit hole where they feel like they have to adopt this 80s golden age bodybuilding diet to reach a respectable health and weight, when that's nothing further from the truth. So what is the step that almost everybody skips? They focus on the flashy stuff, like what diet am I going to do? What exercise am I going to do? But they don't actually create awareness before they start. My good friend Jared Hamilton, who's a coach, he was on this podcast earlier in the episodes. He said this quote. I don't know if it came from him, but I love it. He said, you can't free yourself from the prison that you don't know you're in. And I feel like it starts with awareness, right? How do you fix a roadblock or navigate around a roadblock if you don't know you're hitting it? So how do we create awareness, right? Well, the first thing I would like I do with most of my clients is I anchor them to the process. And we do that by creating awareness of the discomfort that they're currently in. So I have them sit down and write down the current reasons why they want to change. What type of pain are they in? What are they sick and tired of dealing with? Why is this time different? And I tell them no surface level BS, right? I tell them, hey, you're going to take some time. You're going to write this all down. And it should almost feel like you got too vulnerable to the point where you don't want somebody else to read it. That's a good indicator that you went deep, right? And the reason why you want this is twofold. I would like for you to take this paper, put it in an area where you see it daily, or if you want to make it even better, put it in the area that you feel like you sabotage your progress the most. Because that visual reminder is going to at least make the times where you don't want to do things, times where you might sabotage your progress, all an active and conscious decision, because you see that letter to yourself. You see that you're about to go off the deep end. And then it's not like, oh man, in retrospect, I messed up. You made that decision. And then that will allow us to have the awareness of, okay, we just got to work on your coping mechanisms now, right? So having this anchor point is so imperative. And on top of that, let's just talk about the natural progression of motivation. Motivation is highest when you first start a goal and when you're about to finish a goal. So in the middle, you find this weird, I say motivational desert. And that's because you're in this state of limbo. You're no longer in as much pain as you were when you first started this journey, In fact, I just got off a phone call with a client. This was a week ago now. She's down 30 pounds. She's now exercising without feeling a severe amount of friction around doing it. Like she feels like it's pretty easy. And she started to fall off. She just said, like, I don't know what it is. I just don't feel that oomph anymore. So what did I do? I pulled up our intake form when we first met each other and I read the form to her. And you can see her her mindset shift in front of me. And that's just because you reestablish why you started this journey to begin with. That reminder, those words that you used are going to trigger something deep down inside you and realize, like, okay, I'm still in it. I got to keep going. I got to see this through. So, having something that anchors you to the process is super, super important. Now, another thing that I want or I have most of my clients do after they do the anchoring process, writing to themselves activity, then I actually have them sit down and think about their eating habits. Were you actually eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Were you grazing throughout the day? Were you aware when you were grazing throughout the day? Some people don't realize that when they are stressed or when they are emotional, like even bored, they graze. It's just a form of mental stimulation for some people, and then other times it's a form of coping. I mean, it's very common for people that are highly stressed, high levels of the stress hormone cortisol. They'll eat a substantial amount of carbohydrates. We know that when we eat a lot of carbohydrates, our happy hormone, serotonin, goes up while cortisone goes down, right? So we find this coping mechanism that makes us feel better, but we end up in a circumstance where we're eating more than we're currently burning, right? But once again, if you're not aware of this, it's hard for you to even address it. This is something that I've seen with myself and some other clients is I'll get bored, I'll walk around my house, I'll open up the fridge, I might see some fruit, I'll grab some fruit and then close the fridge and then go do something else and then rinse and repeat. It's not like I got up to think, "Oh, I'm hungry," right? It was just I was bored. And now, of course, like fruit is something that's not like super calorically dense where it's going to be misaligned with my goals. But if you do this across a couple days, you do this across a couple times throughout those days, you might be in a circumstance where you are gaining more weight because you're eating more calories than what you're currently burning, right? So creating that awareness around, am I eating around my hunger or am I using food as a stress reduction or emotional masquerade? That's another amazing thing to be aware of. In fact, the two clients that I started to reference in the beginning of this episode, one of them emotionally eats because of how stressed he is, unbelievably stressed. And he realized that he would go through bags and bags of chips. And then he would realize that he put away around 500 calories. And then when you compare that to what he could have eaten instead of that, he was mortified. He didn't realize he was eating that many calories. But when you're emotional about things, you're not thinking about anything that's objective. Like, is this going to help me in the long run? You're just trying to get out of that emotion, right? So taking the time, understanding how your current eating habits are you getting to the point where you're only eating breakfast and then you wait till dinner and you are starving, so you end up just eating everything in sight? Maybe we have to improve upon that. If you don't have the time to have a proper lunch, perhaps having a protein shake to help blunt some of those hunger levels, that's another option, right? But if you don't create the awareness around what your eating habits are, you can't correct anything. Asking yourself these questions are very important. Then as we start to realize our eating habits, and then we can actually get into the specifics of, like, what are we eating, right? And creating an understanding that food isn't good or bad. A cheeseburger doesn't have morality, right? It wasn't like a bank robber in its past life, right? But it's important to say these things because I'm hearing the vocabulary of some of my clients and they say, I messed up, I ate terribly, I ate bad food. But what is good? What is bad food? There's food that I would agree that are maybe not aligned with your health, and eating a substantial amount of it might not be the best for you, but it doesn't mean you can't eat it. There was a nutrition professor who wanted to prove the point that you could eat quote unquote processed junk food and still lose weight. In his 10-week experiment, all he ate was protein shake and Twinkies. Lost, I think, 40-ish pounds. And on top of that, his blood markers actually were improved. Does that mean Twinkies is superfood that we didn't know about? Of course not. It more so showed that having excess body fat on our frames is detrimental to our health, and the fact that a caloric deficit is the way that we lose weight to begin with. So, why am I bringing this up? Well, I have my clients, my clients previous to working with me felt like they had to eat a diet that cut out all their favorite foods. This person wanted to not drink any soda. So he cuts it off cold turkey. And then 3 days after not drinking any soda, he had a F it moment because he was super stressed. He had 5 cans of soda throughout the day. That is something that is very common. And that's something that we can avoid if you do not deprive yourself from foods that you like, but instead have it in moderation. And it's easier said than done when first starting. But once again, if you do not have the awareness of this, how would you even begin to change it? So another thing that we create awareness around is how much protein, how much protein, how much veggies are you eating? Okay. The reason why I say protein and veggies, well, protein and veggies are both going to be something that makes you feel fuller longer on top of the whole long list of health benefits, right? And I've been noticing a lot of the clients are focusing so much on processed foods, like they don't really eat processed foods, and it actually puts them in the cycle of they're extremely hungry 24/7 because their body just metabolizes it so fast that it's just looking for the next thing. So what are the type of foods are you eating? Are they aligned with your goals? Are you getting enough protein to support muscle mass? Are you getting enough veggies in to get the proper amount of fiber to keep things regular, but also the antioxidants to help overall health as well? Creating awareness around that is super important because then we start to be able to tweak some things, right? And when we start to tweak things, then we start to see some magic really happen. So I'm hoping this is all becoming super clear. This is exactly the process that I took 2 of these people through, and they're doing tremendously well. And if you just follow these steps, I think that you would do well as well. I think you get my point. So the thing that we need to draw awareness to is what are some small substitutions that we can focus on that are going to be calorically smart, but you don't feel like you're restricting? So, an easy example is how much olive oil or how much cooking oil are you using? 1 tablespoon of this oil is 120 calories. Most people douse their pan to make sure that nothing sticks. So, on top of the food that you're eating, you're adding an additional, let's say, 200 to 300 calories on top of that, right? That's an easy place to start where we can just go into maybe only 1 tablespoon or perhaps use a cooking spray, right? Stuff like that. That's going to help reduce the amount of oils that we're cooking with and eating. Another thing that we did with one of our clients is we just reduced the fat content in all the dairy that he was eating. He's a big dairy eater. And what we just did was, okay, instead of whole milk, we're going to be focusing on 1% or skim milk. That's going to create a deficit and you're actually going to be losing weight to begin with. Okay. So that's another calorically smart swap, right? I had another client who loves Gatorade. So I suggested, okay, maybe instead of Gatorade, can we find maybe Mio water, like one of those things where you squeeze into the water? It's less calories. And from there, we can create a deficit there as well because he was drinking, I think, 3 Gatorades a day. So 3 Gatorades a day at 200 a pop, that's 600 calories. That's a whole meal that we just wiped off by using Mio water. So the game plan here is understand what you're eating, see what we can do and how we can make calorically smart swaps. And you can just see the fat loss begin to happen. And you're like, oh, wow, I really didn't do anything. And that's the idea, right? We want you to be able to eat the foods that you want to eat, lose the fat that you want to lose, and improve your health markers overall. So once we kind of create that awareness around the food intake, what about just overall activity, right? The equation that we've been talking about this entire time is How much calories are we eating? How many calories we're burning? And that relationship between the two decides whether or not our body is going to store energy, right? Fat is just stored energy. So let me ask you something. If you burn, let's say for easy math, you burned 1,000 calories today, but you only ate 100 calories, is your body going to store that 100 calories? No, there's nothing for it to store because your body needs it, right? So now it must get energy from inside the body, which is going to be derived from the fat storage that you have. And then unfortunately, it also can be coming from your muscle mass as well. This is why we focus on the protein intake. When you focus on high protein intake while being in a diet, it helps preserve the muscle that we currently have. Okay. So, how do we up-regulate the amount of calories we are burning? Well, what's your general activity like? Are you somebody that's pretty sedentary at a desk all day? Maybe you're standing in one spot all day because that's what your job requires. Unfortunately, you're not going to be burning a lot of calories, which means it's going to be hard for you to consume less than that, right? That's why it's always our suggestion to try to get anywhere between 7 to 10,000 steps. That's going to help, one, overall health markers, but two, you're going to create a dynamic where you don't have to diet so hard because you are burning calories, right? Of course, we want to focus on building more muscle, so your body needs more calories at rest, which also makes fat loss super easy. But right now, we're just keeping simple and creating awareness around these areas that we're talking about. So look at your phone. All of them, like almost every phone I know, collects and tracks how much steps you're doing. Right. So just see what your average is. If your average is 3,000 steps, I would say it's pretty low. We can work on that and just try to improve maybe 100 per day until you're in the recommended range. But of course, you got to listen to your body and see how symptoms are. Right. So all these, like, just creating awareness between these two patients, it was like a night and day breakthrough. Seeing their results and how easy it's been for them, I felt like I had to get on here and talk to y'all and just give you this one step, I guess one major step broken down into subsections, could be the make or break to your overall success. So just to recap here, if you are trying to lose weight, build strength, and unlock lost mobility, what we're going to be focusing on right now is creating awareness. Why do you want to change? Maybe talk about what you tried in the past and why didn't it work, right? You want to be focusing on, when it comes to fat loss, what are your current eating habits like? Are you eating when you're hungry? Are you eating 3 square meals? Are you basically fasting until nighttime and then you overeat? Right? Like, what is going on there? Next, you want to be, oh, I guess let's just take a second and also talk about exercise. Instead of eating habits, what are your exercise habits? Do you go to the gym and you just go all out and then you create this bad dynamic where you're like, I don't want to go there. That was traumatic. Right? Or are you going there and having a good time? Right? So, like, these are all interchangeable depending on what your goals are. Then you're going to create awareness around, where are your calories coming from, right? Are you eating enough protein? Are you eating enough veggies, right? Or exercise version of this, are you utilizing enough weight to make sure you're challenged, right? Are you hitting the right exercises that are challenging all the muscles of your body? Yeah. Creating awareness is super important. And then the last thing is, like, talking about what is your overall, like, activity? Are we burning calories? And are we making it easier for ourselves to be in a caloric deficit? Well, going through all this has helped a lot of my clients. So I'm hoping that hearing this has helped you build some clarity and build somewhat of a roadmap on how to anchor yourself to a long-term goal. If you have any questions, that's what the Facebook community is all about. You can reach out to me via DM. I'm trying to be as responsible as possible, or responsive as possible. And then also keep in mind that you can always email me as well if you have any questions on top of that. And then if you are somebody that is just a podcast listener and you have no clue that I have a Facebook community or a email list, you can reach out to me on either. Actually, I'll put my email. Maybe I not. Maybe I won't put my email there. I don't know if that would get spam. I would say reach out to me on Instagram. It's bs.parker. I'll put the link in the show notes. That will give you all the access to how you can reach out to me and ask any of the questions that you want. All right. Talk to you later.